Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Simon Mabon, Professor of International Politics and Middle East Studies at Lancaster University. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24.
Thanks for having me.
Last time MBS, as he's known, was in the US, he travelled around and really made a point to talk up the social and economic changes he was making in the kingdom. Now it seems he doesn't really have to impress. Donald Trump is already on his side. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a dramatic shift in the standing of Mohammed bin Salman since his last visit. There's been this dramatic rehabilitation of his image after the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, and there's been a dramatic transformation of life in the kingdom. I think Saudi Arabia has become a more central, more prominent power on the world stage. And that is reflected in the standing and the influence that MBS exerts, not only in Washington but beyond. And I think that we're going to see more and more influence from Mohammed bin Salman. He's going to try and squeeze out every last bit of a deal that he can with Donald Trump. And I guess what we're going to find out is where the power really lies in this relationship. Will MBS get what he wants, or will Donald Trump be able to put pressure on Mohammed bin Salman to get a normalization with Israel?
And part of what Mohammed bin Salman wants might be to convince Washington to try to again reach or go to the negotiating table with Iran over a nuclear deal. Do you think that he will be effective in achieving that?
Well, I think what's really interesting is that package that you played just before showed Donald Trump saying that the Saudis would be thankful that the Americans took out the Iranian nuclear program. I think what Donald Trump said there is that he's completely misread the lay of the land in terms of the Middle Eastern regional security environment, and that the Saudis and the Iranians are now working together. They're engaging in joint military operations, and the Saudis were pretty vocal in their outrage at what happened during the quote unquote 12-day war. So yeah, I think Donald Trump's going to be facing a bit of pressure from Mohammed bin Salman to try and renegotiate a nuclear deal. But of course, whether the Iranians will be receptive to that, whether they can trust Donald Trump after everything that happened during that time, is another thing. And yeah, I'm not entirely convinced of that, but there'll certainly be pressure from MBS.
Trump also announced the sale of F-35 stealth fighters to Saudi Arabia, but the US has so far only allowed such sales to its closest allies. What do you make of this then?
Well, I can't say that I'm all that surprised that this type of decision has been reached, given that the Saudis have promised this 600 billion in investment into the US, given the closer collaboration on AI and security. I think there's a real economic pragmatism that is driving this relationship between the kingdom and the United States. But that, of course, will not be the only thing that's at play here. I think there will be these broader sort of things that come alongside that economic pragmatism and the cultivation of these relationships. And a closer security arrangement stemming from the sale of F-35s, I think, is one of those things that will come out of it. But that does change the landscape of regional politics. It does make Israel increasingly wary, given that it dramatically changes its influence and strategic role in the Middle East. And I guess it opens up all these serious questions about where does the US see that its strategic priorities in the Middle East lie? Is it with its long-standing ally Israel, or is it with Saudi Arabia, an equally long-standing ally, but of a very different sort?
Trump also expressed hope earlier this month that Saudi Arabia can join the Abraham Accords and normalize ties with Israel. But analysts are saying that this is pretty much off the table for now. Can the Saudis pressure the Americans for concrete steps towards a two-state solution?
Again, this goes back to that question of the broader relationships that are at play between the US, the Saudis, and the Israelis. I very much doubt that Mohammed bin Salman will agree to normalization without concrete steps towards a Palestinian state, and they would have to be irreversible. MBS has expressed on a number of occasions that he's fearful for his life if he were to normalize without a Palestinian state. But at the same time, Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that he has been at the vanguard of efforts to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. So even if MBS is able to put pressure on Donald Trump and Donald Trump's able to put pressure on Netanyahu, the dynamics and the contours of Israeli politics mean that Netanyahu is very unlikely to agree to that, even if he sees the benefits of a normalization agreement with Saudi. So there's a lot of different moving parts here. There's a lot of different pieces on the chessboard, and I'm not sure that they all fit together, and they're certainly not moving all in the same direction.
All right, well, we have to wait and see. It's certainly a complex situation. Thank you very much, Simon Mabon. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there.